Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Randy with Snap Judgments. Coming to you live just a couple minutes late, so my apologies, guys. Um, I want to start by talking about by updating a story from yesterday. Um, I had talked about the Marte Mapu release or pending release. At the time, the story was basically that I guess at the time the story was released, it was that the Patriots were it had informed Marte Mapu that they intended to release him. Um, they did not, in fact, release him. Apparently, that news generated some trade interest throughout the league. He later in the day was traded to the Houston Texans, and that's for a 2027 upgrade, basically. We trade them Mapu and a seventh. We get back a sixth. So that gives us two fifths and three sixths in the 2027 draft next year, which similar to this year, like they load up on day three picks and it gives you the flexibility to move around potentially and also gives you the opportunity to kind of like fill out depth, take shots on traits guys who fall to the late rounds for a variety of reasons, whether it be personality, coachability, injury, or just lack of traits. You'll have sometimes, very oftentimes, players who are, very solid football players that fall to the day three range because they don't run fast enough or their arms aren't quite long enough or whatever it might be. And so having a plethora of picks in that range where you can afford to take shots on guys like that, like a Braden Swinson from last year is a great example, right? He's a guy who fell to round 5, I believe they took him in, and that was strictly due to the concerns about coachability. um there were some questions coming out of LSU about kind of how he interacted with the staff and so forth. And so that he fell into the fifth round. They had multiple picks in the fifth round, and again, multiple picks in the sixth round. And so they went ahead and took a swing at him. And it might work out in the long run. It might not. We'll see. Um, So anyway, Marte Mapu, it just upgrades draft capital in next year's draft, which is a you know widely considered by most of us that track the draft year round to be a much better draft class than this year's draft. There are going to be they're projected to be a number of just elite blue chip players, pass rushers, quarterbacks, wide receivers. There's a left tackle. It's a really good class. Maybe it's a top heavy class. We'll see how kind of like the back end of it fills out. A lot of times at this time of the year, you have a pretty good idea of like kind of what you expect the top half of the class to be, but those projections always change drastically too. I mean, at this time of year last year, a lot of people like in their way too early mock drafts last year, it was guys like Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier in the top 10. And now Cade Klubnik is hoping to be drafted at all, and Garrett Nussmeier will probably go on day two. But I mean, even that's not a lock. So, it's really hard to bank on these things, but that class is projected to have a lot of top tier talent in it. So positioning yourself well in that class to be able to kind of move around at will if necessary is obviously a great thing, especially for a guy who in the morning you were planning on getting nothing for him. You were planning on just releasing him. So definitely a good move by them. All right. Next, we are going to get into this Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini story real quick. I'm not like a big gossip guy, so you know, but Vrabel's not really giving us a lot of choice here because it kind of hits close to home, and there's, you know, decide how much validity you think there is to the story, I guess. But there's certainly smoke. Um, so page 6, which is a publication, I think, from the New York Post. Um, but it's page6.com. It's like their own site. Everybody's kind of blaming this on the New York Post, but I don't know that that's who it is that exposed it, or followed them, or whatever it might be. But at any rate, Mike Vrabel and Dianna Russini had some pictures released of them at a resort in Sedona, which apparently there are a number of pictures released. And so let me just go through this. Vrabel was this is like are wildly annoying. So just be prepared for that. But the Vrabel was there. He was there for the Arizona State University pro day, and they were also there. There was the owner meetings in Arizona, um, and this is at a hotel called the Ambiance, which is about 2 hours away from Arizona State University and about 2 hours away from the hotel that Vrabel himself was staying at. Um, According to a source close to Rossini, uh, that was mentioned in the article, she was staying at the hotel during a hiking trip with two female friends. One of Vrabel's friends told Page Six that they and the coach drove up to Sedona for the day with another pal, and that they all drove back to their own hotel some 2 hours away after hanging out with Rossini and her gang. That was the exact line out of the article. The asked, um, well, they quote a number of eyewitnesses in here, basically saying that uh, these guys appeared to be alone, hanging out most of the time. There are a number of pictures from this, and you see right there hanging out in the hot tub, which is like they're not cuddled up there. That's fine, I guess. The hanging out by the pool up there on top. Look, you could see two guys doing that or whatever. But this is kind of like where I think there's some legitimate questions here, is kind of with this whole like romantic embrace. Like it's definitely a nice setting for this sort of thing. This is reportedly, according to the article, this is on a rooftop balcony of a private bungalow at the hotel. The private bungalows go for up to $2,100 a night, apparently. So definitely pricey. Um, yeah. She wasn't caught. She was accused in the past. So well, definitely like, yeah, that's, you know, um, but it just, look, the whole like you've got your fingers interlocked, like, and you're on like the rooftop of a private bungalow, and they're basically, both of them had put out similar statements, and I'll go ahead and read them. Let me scroll down and find them. um all right. There were remarks, maybe they're not right here in this article, but both of them essentially said, Mike Vrabel said that any implication of impropriety is laughable. And Rossini says that they're out of context, that it was a big group. There were six of them hanging out. So her and two of her friends, and Mike Vrabel and two people with him, presumably. Um, that there were six of them hanging out, and it was just a group of friends. I think that, look, some of these shots are pretty wide frame, right? There's clearly nobody else there with them, like, I guess maybe on the other side of the hot tub for sure, but there's a number of empty chairs around, and, you kinda see the same thing with the pool, situation here. There's nobody there at all, and there are a couple empty chairs up there too, and they don't appear, to be I don't know, but, and then the whole rooftop thing, like, I guess the friends were downstairs inside, and these guys wanted to go have a private moment. Look, I have no idea what's going on with this, but I definitely know the one thing I know about this is that if this were me, I would not want to have to explain this to my wife or significant other or whatever it might be. Now, Mike Vrabel is married. He's been married for a long time, 26 years, I believe, to his wife, whose first name is Jen, I believe. Um, and Russini, on the other hand, she has been married for about 5 or 6 years. Her husband is like the CEO of Shake Shack, I guess. I don't know his name. I know they've got two young kids together. She's like in her early 40s. Vrabel just turned 50. But they've got a couple young kids together. She obviously, travels a lot. There's a couple recordings going around with her kind of joking about the status of their marriage and so forth. Um, so there's a lot going on to these stories. Um, it's definitely a case of you've got to be smarter, okay? Especially for her, to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong. I really like Dianna Russini. I think she does a great job. I enjoy watching her show, which is on YouTube on The Athletic, right? But she has had these accusations in her past before. Back in 2015, the wife of at the time it was called the Washington Redskins, GM John something. Uh, I had his last name earlier, but whatever. Anyway, uh, the wife of the GM of the Redskins at the time tweeted something in response to an article she wrote. She wrote an article about how Kirk Cousins was taking over the starting job from Robert Griffin III. And the wife of the GM replied on X or Twitter. It was called at the time. Everything's changed their name since then. But sorry, the wife replied on X and said something to the effect of, uh, I think she's getting this story from my husband. She's his side piece or something like that. Um, and later on obviously tweeted out an apology and I was angry and there was no reason and that sort of thing. But the point is that the accusations had been made before, and here you are setting yourself up in a very, very easy spot to be criticized for this exact same sort of assumption, behavior, whatever you might want to call it. I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but it's not a far leap from that. So you're making it really easy for people who do want to jump to conclusions to do that. And it's a case of you've got to be a lot smarter than this. Okay. Now, again, I don't know what's going on, and I'm not going to defend it or attack it. I am really, really not a fan of like cheating on your spouse from either side, man or woman. And while a lot of people will put themselves in Mike Vrabel's shoes and say, "Oh no, it's easy," I also put myself in her husband's shoes. And look, if you're her husband sitting at home and all of a sudden these photos pop up online, you're not happy about it, okay? You're on the phone, you want some explanation. I don't care what her job is, and like, I don't care what her job is, and I don't care how understanding or secure you are, when your wife appears not in private. I mean, that is essentially a little bit in private, right? It's a rooftop deck of a private bungalow that someone paid 2 grand a night for. Um, and they're holding hands in this manner. You're on the rooftop of a private bungalow. They are not saying hi right now. This is not a greeting. This is not them at the front door. This is not the first time they saw each other that day or even whatever. Like this is a private deck. So like I can't imagine what excuse would be acceptable to me in this scenario if I was her husband. And maybe I'm wrong. And maybe I'm too, I don't know, whatever, old school, or if you want to say I'm insecure or something, fine, say that. Like, I don't, I'm just saying that you are putting yourself in a very bad position in a place where it is a very short jump to making some very bad assumptions, especially if you already have that in your past. And again, nothing confirmed in the past, but where there's smoke, there's often fire. And where there's smoke several times, there might be some fire somewhere. Okay. And so it's just, you've really got to be smarter than this. Um, Look, there are cameras everywhere. It's very easy to take things out of context. But it's also very easy to not put yourself in these situations. Okay. I mean, I am a man in long-term committed relationships who frequently works with women, and I do not hug the woman when they come in the door even, okay? I don't believe there's any reason for me to have, like, outside of work contact with women that I work with. Like, if we have a relationship for the sake of work, like a work relationship or whatever, where we, rely upon each other to do tasks or we work together on certain projects or whatever it might be, fine. But there's no reason for us to like bring that relationship outside of work and try and turn it into some friendship or some scenario like that. And I find it very, very hard to believe that there's that many people out there in the world who are would be super comfortable with this situation if they were the husband sitting at home or the wife sitting at home seeing these pictures pop up. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, no, that is no, but I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like a work husband, work wife. What I just mean like a working relationship, like just somebody at work. Like in the same way friendship is a relationship in whatever, like any interaction between two people is technically like a relationship between those people. It's not a relationship in like the dating sense. It's a relationship in like the overall meaning of the word. Like that's what I mean. Like if you have a working relationship with someone, just meaning like someone that you work with, like not a like work husband or wife sort of scenario or whatever. But it's just again, it's very hard for me. There's a lot of people on Twitter who are like, "This is ridiculous," and I can't. I don't know why this is a story, but I bet if that was their husband or their wife in that picture, they'd probably have some different thoughts because I know I would. And I spoke with my girlfriend about it this morning, and she agreed. And I think there are a lot of people who would agree, and who, if that was their spouse on either side in that picture, they would for sure have some questions. Okay. I mean, this guy drove 2 hours out of his way on a busy weekend, took the little bit of time that he had to go hang out with her. And there's no two ways about that. I mean, he drove a 4-hour round trip to hang out with this woman. And no stories. This is not, I was like going back and looking and trying to find any like Patriots related, like were they doing some big Patriots story or something like that? And I found no evidence of that on Rossini's timeline, nor do I remember anything about that. Like this is clearly a friendship at very least. Okay. And, you know, I just like, listen, if I had a buddy who I was at a work conference and he was like, listen, I got this really sweet hotel room 2 hours away. Come on, hang out, da 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 da. Of course I would go. Like, who wouldn't? But like, if it was all right, say Mike and I are friendly. If Mike got a hotel room somewhere and I went up there and hung out with him, sure, that might happen, but we wouldn't be holding hands on the rooftop, embracing each other while we admire the sunset. Okay. Like, so there's only so much going on here that you can explain with like, oh, well, we're friends. So look, at the end of the day, it's not my business. It's not my relationship. This episode is probably the last time I'll ever mention this. Um, but it's worth mentioning. It's a brand new story, just breaking from last night. And, um, Mike, the, but I don't like to get into this sort of gossipy bullshit, and it's really not impactful. Okay, it really isn't. Now, the only way that you can turn this into football related, and I think it's such a weird take, but I've seen it a lot on Twitter this morning, is that people are saying that like um Dianna Russini has been driving all of the noise for an AJ Brown trade, and that she's trying to push for it because Vrabel is her side piece or whatever, and it would help him. And her husband's an Eagles fan, and somehow that's wired into all these sorts of ideas about this. I don't understand that personally. I would think the idea for her, if anything, would be to get like scoops, not to like influence and push trades in the league. Like, that seems like a wild overestimation of her power and influence on the league. Like, do I think her podcast probably influences fans? Sure. But do I think she's like driving Howie Roseman to do a trade by her report? No, that's absurd. That's absurd and ridiculous. And I don't know why anybody would think that. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Um, so yeah, that's about what I've got on that. Again, I don't really expect to be doing any more stories on this. I just It's a silly gossipy story, but it is something that happened overnight. So I figured, you know what, it's probably worth mentioning. Um, so anyway, what I'd like to get into today is with the trade of Marte Mapu yesterday, um, the complete decimation of the pre-Vrabel roster um, continues, right? They are just like shipping out of town, cutting, releasing, whatever, everybody from that era. The era had absolutely terrible drafting. Okay. Um, and right here, this is Michael Rodnick on Twitter, X, whatever it is, um, who has it up here: 11 of 48 draft picks from 2020 to 24 still on the roster. And some of these guys realistically have some questions going forward. I mean, I think it wouldn't surprise me if by the start of the season, we were talking about 6, 7, or 8 of these guys still being on the roster, and that's it. So let's go through. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go through and see what we've got, right? What happened, why, and kind of just use that to inform, the current draft strategy. Um, so to put this in perspective, also, NFL draft retention rate average between those years, according to Fox Sports, was 55%. Now, by the numbers, 11 of 48 is less than 25%. Obviously, it's about 22 and change. Just off the top of my head, I don't know. I could probably do it out, but yeah. So well below average here in New England between 2020 in 2024. 22.9%. Um, which is, again, it's less than half of the league average. And some of those teams are drafting a lot more guys that they're keeping. Some of these teams are excellent at drafting. The Patriots have not been. It's too early for like a full, real, honest review of the 2025 class. I mean, at some point in time, we will review that class just to kind of see how the rookie year was and so forth. But you just can't fully review it for at least 2, ideally 3 seasons before you have a real idea of who everybody is. Now, some of those guys might get cut, some of those guys might get traded before that 3 seasons is up, but that gives you the best picture, right? These guys, like the oldest or most recently drafted players, will have 2 seasons under their belt in these groups. So again, looking at the draft pick history, 11 of 48, and looking at the 2020 draft to start out with. Now, this started out with Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene, Justin Rohrwasser, a kicker, Onwenu, who obviously excellent pick, Justin Herron, Cash Maluia, I'm not sure if that's how you say that, and Dustin Woodard. 4 of these guys are still in the NFL for sure, maybe 5 because I think Justin Herron might be also. Only one of these guys is still on the team. Okay, now Kyle Duggar was still on the team at the beginning of last season, but he was traded. Sorry, I honestly don't remember if he was traded or cut. But Kyle Duggar was on the team at the beginning of last season. No longer. Anthony Jennings did spend the season on the team, but he has since been released. So of this, only Michael Onwenu was still on the team at all. And that is 1 out of 10. So 1 for 10 in the 2020 draft. Oh, sorry. Better listing here. Now, let's see. Sorry, I'm pulling up. Now, moving on to the 2021 draft picks. In 2021, we made 8 draft picks. Mac Jones in the first round, Christian Barmore, obviously still here in the second round. Third round, Ronnie Perkins, no longer on the roster. Fourth round, Ramondre Stevenson, still here. Fifth round, Cameron McGrone. Sixth round, Joshua Bledsoe. Sixth round, William Sherman. Seventh round, Trey Nixon. Of these 8 picks, 2 of these players remain on the roster, Christian Barmore and Ramondre Stevenson. Now, this class, not an overwhelming success, obviously. Barmore has his moments. He is definitely talented and good, but he also has missed almost an entire season pretty much to injury, and has some off-field questions. So again, not a good draft class, right? 2 for 8 that are still on the roster right now. And only like 1 other of these guys is still in the NFL right now, I think. Mac Jones. So as we move along, we look at the 2022 NFL draft. Okay, this started with kind of the most famous reach of the Bill Belichick era, Cole Strange, who, if you're a draft guy like me, you were throwing shit at the television. Okay. Why do you take, I mean, there was no reason to take him in the first round. He was 3rd round projection by most people. There are other years where we've made bad picks, but you can understand why they were made. The Caden Wallace pick comes to mind in particular. Where it's like, well, there were other players flew off the board. We didn't expect him to be we were kind of thinking we were going to take a tackle in this range, but we thought there would be more guys here, and now there aren't. And so now we're stuck taking a guy that just doesn't work out long term. The Cole Strange pick is entirely different. That was a objectively bad pick. Um, and let me pull up the 2022 NFL draft because I want to highlight the players that were picked after him. This is not like there was no talent in this draft whatsoever. Now, Cole Strange was their first pick. They took him at 29th overall. Immediately after George Karlaftis III was taken, he's been a starter for 4 years, a decent contributor over in Kansas City. A few picks later, Christian Watson was taken, again, a starter for 4 years. A little further down the board, you've got guys like Arnold Ebiketie, who's a decent edge player. Kenneth Walker III, who just won Super Bowl MVP by running all over us. Wan'Dale Robinson, even a decent contributor at the wide receiver position. Jaquan Brisker, solid safety. Cam Jurgens, two-time Pro Bowl center. George Pickens, one-time Pro Bowl wide receiver who is currently somebody that people are talking about should the Patriots try to target him as a draft target. Alec Pierce, the wide receiver that we missed out on in free agency this season. Trey McBride, 2 Pro Bowls, 4 years as a starter, 1 All-Pro. James Cook, 3-time Pro Bowl running back from the Buffalo Bills. Nick Benito, 2-time Pro Bowl edge rusher playing for the Denver Broncos. All of these players taken after Cole Strange at 29. Cole Strange, on the other hand, 3 seasons as a starter and 0 Pro Bowls, 0 All-Pros. Just not an objectively good pick. He was just objectively a terrible pick, the wrong pick. In real time, the Rams front office laughed at the pick because in that year, the Rams had traded the captains of the F them picks people had traded all of their picks for the first like 2 rounds. Their first pick was something like 104 or whatever. And so they laughed because they said they had scouted Cole Strange, thinking, of course, they were going to have a shot at him at nearly pick 100 or wherever it was they were picking that year. Just an objectively terrible draft pick. We saw him struggle in Miami this year. Now, Tyquan Thornton, that's a player that has just like he just hasn't worked out. He had all the speed. He was someone that we had a lot of hope for. Okay, 6'2", very fast. He made some splash plays in Kansas City last year, actually. Also, a long of 61. Ended up making just 19 catches last year, but 438 yards. Like the solid deep threat. That's what we had hoped he would turn into here. But in his time in New England, over the course of 3 years, he played in 28 games, was targeted 76 times, caught just 39 of those targets, and for only 385 yards in 3 seasons, less yards than he had in the 1 year in Kansas City last year, and 2 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns in Kansas City last year. So abject failure here. Marcus Jones, the one good pick of this class. Okay. Marcus Jones, it was an excellent pick. Re-signed this past year, has been one of the better slot corners in the league. Also one of the better punt return guys in the league. Arguably, some people would argue in league history, probably, top 5-ish in league history in terms of punt returns. Jack Jones, personality issues, like fairly serious personality issues from what I understand. Pierre Strong Jr., I don't believe he's in the league any longer. Bailey Zappi had his 15 minutes of fame, but they are pretty much up. I think he's still the practice squad quarterback in Cleveland right now. The rest of these guys no longer playing. So just not a good draft. 1 out of 10 picks is, objectively terrible drafting. And that's what we continue to see over and over and over, right? Um, so just give me one moment. Let me load up the 2023 picks. All right. In 2023, we started out really strong, right? Christian Gonzalez at 17. I mean, Washington took Emmanuel Forbes directly in front of us, paving the way for us to take Gonzalez, who was a top corner in the class the entire time. It was wild that Forbes went ahead of him. Um, but we kind of lucked into getting Christian Gonzalez, who was a great prospect and has been as advertised. All right. Now he's had moments. Okay. He got a couple times last year by AD Mitchell once and by Marvin Mims in the AFC Championship game. Um, but overall, he was still a top-rated corner in the league last year. Keon White was traded to San Francisco for a bag of chips. Actually, a sixth-round pick in this year's draft, one of the 4 sixth-round picks that we have. That was last year. He just didn't do what they needed him to do. Um, they did try and give him a run, and the guy is a physical friggin' specimen. Okay, so I had high hopes for Keon White at this time last year. I thought, you know what, he's getting a real coaching staff. Like he's going to come in here and he's going to he's going to turn it up, and these athletic gifts are going to you know really shine. And that's not what happened. He got traded to San Francisco, and then somehow in during Super Bowl week, kind of cheddar bobbed himself and ended up with a bullet in his leg. I'm not sure. Like, I never saw any details that actually came out from that, and I didn't really go out of my way to go search for them. But he's not here anymore. Is the end of that? Okay. Marte Mapu was just traded yesterday, as we talked about, to Houston. He had an interesting run here, a pop between different positions from safety to linebacker and back again, or rather from linebacker to safety and back again. Just never really found his footing. Jake Andrews, Chad Ryland, City Sao, Antonio Mafe, all not here any longer. Now, mistakes or whatever, maybe. Um, I believe that Chad Ryland uh, left here and went to Arizona. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to double check and look it up right now. But and was absolutely like solid in Arizona. Okay. Overall, let's see. Field goals made, field goals attempted, 28 of 32, 53-65 total, which is an 81.5 field goal percentage. Through 1 year in New England, he was 16 of 25, which is a 64% field goal percentage here in New England. Obviously, again, a failure here, especially when you're taking a kicker in the 4th round. You want him to, be able to kick. And when you're taking a kicker in the 4th round and he can't kick, that's a real problem. I should be called Twix. Keishon Boutte still on the roster. Okay. Finally, we get someone else still on the roster, right? This massive draft class of 12 players. And 4 of these guys are still on the roster. Isaiah Bolden, there's, he's kind of a practice squad sort of guy. Like he's up and down, on and off the roster a bit. I think that I think that there's some need for to look at replacing him in this offseason. I think it's kind of an understated need. And I'll talk about it a little bit more probably tomorrow. But if you look at this, Bryce Behringer ranks 25th in punts, 19th in punt average, 26th in net yards, 22nd net yards per punt, 22nd punts inside the 20, and 15th in punts inside the 20. Oh, percentage wise. Gotcha. So sorry, I couldn't see that for some reason. But yeah, so he is one of the guys that's still on this roster from this class, but that may not be for long. Um, so that's why we may be looking at even less than 11 guys on the roster in the very near future. I really think that's not even possible, but probable. There will continue to be cuts and potentially trades from this group. So, all right, the 2024 draft picks are right here. We've got Drake May, who they took third overall. Obviously, great decision, right? He hasn't proven everything yet. There are still a few questions, like just to be fair, and so forth. But outright, obviously, a great pick. Jalen Polk, obviously the opposite of a great pick. A terrible pick. He is no longer on the roster. He turned into a 6th round pick from the Saints in next year's draft. And then there's Caden Wallace. Now, Caden Wallace is still technically on the roster. Last year, it felt like he was about the 53rd man on a 53-man roster. If he wasn't the 53rd guy, like he was in the 50s, okay? He was nearly cut. Layden Robinson was actually cut. Javon Baker was cut. Joe Milton was traded. Jaheim Bell was cut. So this entire draft class, pretty much a waste, except for Drake May. And Caden Wallace, like he's still on the roster, but he does not play. He's a backup guard / tackle that can't really find a spot and was only good enough to stay on the roster because they shipped out Cole Strange. Well, they cut Cole Strange rather. So, he beat out the guys that got cut, but he's never been good enough to get on the field himself. Javon Baker also gone again, and Marcellus Dial still here. Joe Milton III traded almost immediately after Mike Vrabel took over last year. Like he just did not like him. Something about him, obviously, I don't know. Maybe Elliot Wolf didn't like him before that or something, but obviously there was something with him because that was a very, very quick trade after they took over. And then Jaheim Bell, no longer on the team. So you can look right here and see. And again, you see these little exclamation points because Wallace and Dial are really on the roster bubble. Okay. And so you go through here and there's, 6 check marks, which is basically 6 players who I think their spot is not guaranteed, but like pretty likely. Or they're gone entirely. So Marcus Jones, the only one in the entire 2022 class that you could say this about, right? Sorry, I realized I got rid of the 2020 and 2021. But yeah, Marcus Jones is the only one you could say that about in the 2022 draft. Looking back to 2020, Mike Onwenu, the only one still here. Literally 1 out of 10 in 2020. 2021, 2 out of 8. So that's 3 out of 18 so far. 2022, 1 out of 10. So that's 4 out of what? I lost track. 4 out of 18. Anyway, you get the drift. Now, this draft class, 4 out of 12. Okay. You at least get 4 guys. I mean, it's still only a 33% hit rate, but heck, I take that. At this point, you might as well, even if one of them's a punter, right? Now the 2024 draft class, one, essentially one out of 8. Now, technically 3. But again, Wallace was probably the 53rd man on the roster. Dial was probably also in the 50s. So not great pieces of your roster. And they might in fact be cut this offseason. Cut, traded, released, whatever, however you want to phrase it. Okay. So you'll have one draft class pick from that class. So going back through these, again, remember the NFL draft retention rate average is 55%. Not counting last year's draft, the Patriots have kept 11 of 48, 22.9% of their draft picks. Look, simply put, it teaches us a few things. Number one, if you get the right quarterback, it really doesn't matter. Okay, you get the right quarterback and pair him with the right offensive coordinator, and you're going to get places. Doesn't matter how badly you've drafted. Because that's what happened here, right? Drake May paired with the right offensive coordinator and the right coach, and they took advantage of some situations, sure, but they were in the playoffs. They would have been in the playoffs competing regardless of however it finished out, right? It doesn't matter that their draft classes were all trash prior to that. At the same time, if you can build up some good draft classes and then get the quarterback right also, that's how you build the dynasty. And getting the quarterback right as a first step does put some obstacles in the way when it comes to surrounding them with talent, right? Especially if you don't have any cheap young talent on the roster because you drafted poorly. So, yeah, I mean that's basically what we're looking at here is the Patriots needing to make a a real impact, a real difference, as far as oh crap, why did I lose my train of thought there? In this draft, they need to continue to hit on picks in this draft. Look, I think last year's draft was good. I don't think it's been enough time to really give it a full grade and break down the players and call them hits or misses or any of that sort of thing right now. It's definitely too early, but it looks good. The early results are good. The 4 years prior to that, almost a complete waste. We need another strong draft like last year where we can load in contributors across the board at every position, build the depth of this roster, and ultimately improve the quality of the team overall. Will we improve the end result last year? Maybe. I mean, sure, there's always a chance we win the Super Bowl, right? But that's not necessarily how we're going to judge this team. So look, I'm going to call it on this episode right now. It actually ran a little shorter than I thought it was going to. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. Tomorrow, I've got a plan in the works surrounding mock drafting. And yeah, we're going to take a look at a couple different strategies for the Patriots, I think. So, unless any news pops between now and then, any organization of the Patriot, any member of the organization decides to, pop up in the news for some random and or ridiculous reason, we will be sticking with pre-draft coverage tomorrow. We'll probably touch on some of the things that come out in Dane Brugler's The Beast draft guide today. And I'm not sure when Bob McGinn releases his kind of like full report, but it's something I always keep an eye out for this time of year. So if you haven't already, go check out the Dane Brugler guide. And if you get the chance, check out Bob McGinn also. Bob McGinn always has some kind of like nuggets and so forth. from behind the scenes, it primarily like personality, character, red flag sort of stuff. And he's got a track record of being rather on point. So I am always interested to see what he has to say each draft cycle. And then Dane Brugler's draft guide is well known to be the most in-depth draft guide that you can possibly find. So if you want to, if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely go check those guys out. And otherwise, I will see you all you folks here tomorrow morning. All right. Thanks very much. Have a great day.